So Wuda, Ariya Jenna, Camille Perrurle Dobson, Nia Jenna, Veronica Perrurle Dobson. So my name is Camille Dobson. This is my mum, Veronica Perrurle Dobson. You usually get us in pairs. I'm not sure what you'll get today. Mum was all enthusiastic about it, but now she's feeling a bit nervous, so I'm here to support her to do this. So just a quick introduction for Mum. So Mum turned 81 last week, and she's been working on her language and working on the environment, like working with environmental groups about concerns that we have around the country for at least the last 50 years, if not longer. She's a teacher, so she's been involved in curriculum development and has been, informing sort of education and Indigenous education across, the territory for a very long time. Her plant knowledge is second to none, so the talk that we will talk about today has a bit of the plant knowledge, but she will also be talking about traditional healing, and we'll introduce you to some of the books that she wrote. She also co-wrote the Eastern and Central Arrernte to English dictionary, which is a quite substantial record of the Arrernte language, and she did that in the 1990s, and that took about 10 years to write. So she's done a lot for her language, and she's very passionate about it. So I'll hand you over to Mum to...
Hello everyone, thanks for coming, and I'm a bit nervous at the moment. As Camille mentioned, that I've been involved in a lot of the, writing of the language that I speak. I'm an Eastern Arrernte from Santa Teresa, and I help with the dictionary and other books, and I sort of still work with different people, giving them information about Arrernte plants and stuff like that, and we're doing a bit of writing about Arrernte plants and what uses the plants have had for our people. It's not like the people now, because the people now are sort of moved into town and living in town. They're not living on their communities much no more, and I suppose it stops them from being in a different Arrernte group country, and they're not wanting to go hunting or anything like that anymore, or fossicking for bush foods and bush medicines.
So Mum was born in 1944, and she grew up at a time of transition. Sorry, my voice isn't carrying as loud as I hoped. So Mum grew up at Arltunga. She was actually born at a place called Arltunga, which is about 80 k's out of Alice Springs if you go along the Ross Highway. And when she grew up, it was sort of a transitional period for the people that were living in that area, because the mission had moved from Alice Springs. So there was a mission in Alice Springs called the Little Flower Mission, and it had been moved out to Arltunga. So it moved out there in 1942, and Mum was born in 1944. So her life was kind of a bit mixed in that she still had a lot of traditional connections to country and family, but was also influenced by what was happening with missionaries. And they were in a dormitory being raised by nuns. But unlike some of the other missions, they could actually leave the mission and go and stay with their families on weekends and during like the Christmas holidays and those kinds of things. The mission was really kind of focused on replacing the Aboriginal culture with, Western teaching. And what Mum was going to talk about was how, Aboriginal people grew up with this knowledge, like a really strong and rich knowledge about Aboriginal plants, Arrernte plants, and what they were used for in their healing. But in addition to that, part of the healing is this spiritual, and with this, understanding spirituality sort of came from a small child all the way through. Ta-da. So Mum was going to talk. She's going to talk a bit about the plant knowledge and how extensive that was for people that were living off the land, and also talk a little bit about the spiritual healing and how Aboriginal people, Arrernte people, understand the body in a more holistic way. So it's not just a vessel that hurts and bleeds and feels sick, but it's actually part of a bigger. So human beings are actually part of a bigger thing that's outside, which is the spiritual. So Mum was going to talk a little bit about maybe that, hopefully. You've got a microphone. You don't need that.
Well, the spiritual healing, our people were ngangarists. That's what we call them, like a doctor. And we really depended on the ngangarists to heal us when we were sick. And, sometimes our spirit leaves us, or either that something happens to your body and your spirit's either been pushed one side or the other side. And, our healers seem to help us get the spirit back into the normal section where it works for you. And the Ngangaras, they were pretty good healers in the early times. And now, a lot of the people that get sick go to hospitals and stuff like that. And the doctors talk to them in English and tell them about, how to, what type of sickness they got and how to fix it and all that. A lot of the people don't understand. Our healers knew what they had to do for a person when they were sick in certain ways, and our healers were there to explain to you in their own languages and people understood it, whereas at European doctors and foreign doctors and that, it's hard for our people to understand what they mean by telling them things, what's wrong with them and stuff like that. But our people knew exactly what was wrong with you when you went to visit them and spoke to them in language. And a lot of the language is, different languages, but people still use their own languages to explain things and help people understand more about what sickness they had.
So when Arrernte people were talking about, feeling unwell, they would associate, the feeling of unwellness with being unbalanced. So it was something that was inside of you that was unbalanced. So you'd have to get that, realignment so that you could be balance inside. And that was healing. And they talked about sickness in a way that was associated with elements. So, certain winds could make you feel unwell, or, what else were we talking about? We were talking about environmental impacts that would make you feel unwell. And so when you go to a Western doctor and they talk about, I'll take this pill for this headache, or you've got this or whatever, it's not really understanding that there's a sort of cultural, spiritual way of understanding unwellness. And I think that we were talking about it, if you have, medical doctors maybe understanding a little bit more around what is making Aboriginal people unwell and what they understand to be part of the healing process, we could, balance that, and people would maybe feel better about, firstly, having their cultural background and belief acknowledged, but also feel better about getting treatment that is relevant to them. And this has been, I think, something that's, the other thing that makes people sick is an imbalance of country. So if there's things that are happening in your country, or you go to your country and you're not respectful in a traditional sense, then that can also make you unwell. So there's a connectedness between people, country, like external elements like weather, animals, plants, and if any of that is out of balance, it affects everything else. And at the moment, people, like one of the things that people say is, how do we fix what's going on in Alice Springs? There's a lot of very unhappy people in Alice Springs, and we've got, a lot of social issues. And, one of the ways that maybe we could look at addressing some of those issues is understanding it from that perspective, but also reaching back to some of that traditional knowledge that is, that had the answers, because everything that we've got as Arrernte people was given to us at the time of creation. So when the creators were here creating everything, they just gave us everything that we needed to survive. But we've been so far removed from that because of this colonial history that it's become really difficult to maintain that balance. And because that balance is out, it's affecting everything, including social issues in Alice Springs. So, we need to kind of maybe go back to some of that traditional wisdom. So, everyone's talking about innovation and, moving forward. But some of the answers are actually, things that are from back here, like the old ancestor knowledge. And people like Mum, who grew up, walking this country, because when she was a child, they weren't jumping in cars and driving around everywhere. They actually had to walk across, fair distances. And in that time, they were learning all about country. They learnt about what medicines they should be using for what the names of all the plants were, what the names for all the insects are, what the names of all the animals, how it all balanced, and, what the respectful relationship is and what that looks like. And because we've been disconnected from that, we're not doing that anymore. So there's this issue around, how do we get that back and help our people heal? And, people talk about truth-telling, and I think truth-telling is definitely part of that. But we need to do it in a way that really kind of recognises that, Arrernte way of seeing the world and the Arrernte way of expressing that. We were commenting when we walked in, wow, look at this landscape. There's no buffel grass here. For those of you who don't know what buffel grass is, when you're flying into Alice Springs and you go, wow, look how green it is. I thought it was a desert. All that green shouldn't be there. And this has really unbalanced our country. And, this has caused problems with our language and our connection. You can't go out bush now because everyone's really frightened about stepping out of your vehicle in case you're stepping on a snake or something, or, stepping into a big hole or something. Our country is really sick here, and people don't realise how sick it is, because you come here and it looks beautiful and green. But it's actually really, really sick. And the sickness has come from this invasive species that was introduced by pastoralists, and it's like this new wave of colonialism that's impacting our physical being, our spiritual being, and our health. Like the doctor, we've got, nurses and doctors that are reporting that, during the time when buffel was got the seed heads on it, we've got respiratory problems that hike up in the hospitals. And people aren't thinking about this. This is a medical condition caused by something that we're not responsible for. So it's sort of, our country is unwell and it's making everybody unwell. And we need to realise that this is a connection. Like there's a link between everything. We don't exist ourselves in a vacuum. Mum, do you want to say anything else? Sorry, I'm on a bandwagon.
show them those books.
Yep, do you want to talk to... So, for the traditional healing, do you want to talk about your book quickly? This is a shameless plug, by the way. If you want to buy them, they're at Red Kangaroo bookstores or IAD.
And that's the type of stories we used to tell about, you know, people travelling, and also the leaves represent people. And when somebody's sick, we used to make a fire. You can see supposedly a fire there. And then talk about the leaves and say, this person's sick, so we go and get a healer. So there's a lot of information there about how the bush medicines were made and grounded in a way to sort of apply on sores or on body when it was sore or aching or whatever. So a lot of that's in one of the books. IAD sells a lot of those books. And also we got another one there that refers to how we perceived in the early times, and the unwellness, meaning the relationship system with each other and country and what's in it and what's on it.